On today's episode, we're sitting down with Jen Gaskell, a superstar volunteer of PSI on both the English and the Spanish helplines. We'll hear about Jen's lived experience with anxiety, depression, rage, and OCD. Ooh, it's a good one. Make sure you follow us on social media so you don't miss anything I Am One podcast related, including our very first blooper reel from this episode. Listen, Jen did great. Let's just say it was interviewer error that provided the laughs. So get comfortable and enjoy this episode with our friend Jen. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the I Am One podcast are the speaker's own. Tuning into this podcast is not a replacement for therapy or any other form of professional help. Our discussions cover personal stories of perinatal mental health disorders and may feel triggering to some listeners. Your number one priority is to take care of yourself. So if you are in need of support, please reach out to the PSI Helpline by calling or texting HELP to 1-800-944-4773 for help in English and in Spanish. At PSI, we want you to know you are not alone, you are not to blame, and with help, you will be well. Okay, let's get on with the podcast. Jen, welcome to the podcast studio, my friend.
Hi, ladies.
Hi, we're so happy to have you here today. Sit down with you and hear a little bit more about your lived experience and hear about how you're supporting folks in the perinatal period. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm super excited.
Yeah. Well, we are too. It's mutual.
We're definitely mutuies.
Yeah. Jen, if you would be so kind, could you please give us just a little bit of an introduction to who you are?
So my name is Jen Gaskell. I live in Port Washington, Wisconsin, which is a small suburb to the north of Milwaukee. I work in manufacturing and quality. I am a wife, a mom, sister, friend, neighbor, and one of my passions when I'm not working or momming is helping parents on the warm line.
And you help in English and Spanish. Very talented.
I participated in the inaugural group of the Components in Care completely in Spanish with Carla.
Did you?
And Marianela. Yeah, it was.
We were.
How was it?
We were gawking over the photos the other day.
It's so amazing. So now I know all of this extra vocabulary, right? That's not something you get taught in high school or in college Spanish. You're reading literature. You're not talking about mood disorders or your emotions, right?
It's not the conversational Espanol.
No, it is not. It's not.
Right.
¿Dónde está el baño?
How are you feeling emotionally? Are you experiencing postpartum PTSD?
Right. Like, how do I even say those things? Right.
So, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great.
Jen, would you give us a little bit of a background into how perinatal mood and anxiety disorders have touched your life personally?
So I was diagnosed with postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression about 7.5 months after my youngest was born. Fun fact. The day I realized I needed help was actually Mother's Day of 2011. I went to a yoga class that a friend was teaching, and I realized that for the first time in like months, probably over a year, that I felt relaxed and calm. And after her class, I chatted with her a little bit. And in the background, I had remembered that she mentioned that she struggled when she had her oldest. And she just said, you know, the transition from 1 to 2 is hard and just really kind of validating. And so I felt like, okay, well, something's clearly wrong because now I'm finally relaxed. And she validated my experience, but I'm like, I need to do more. So then I remembered looking at the hospital gave us a packet of something. Let me see if I can dig that out, and found the information about they had a support group, and then they also had a therapist that they worked with at the birthing center. So I called, left a message, and then I promptly freaked out because I'm like, how do I make sure I get seen right away? So I then placed a call to my cousin, who's a social worker, and said, I'm really struggling. I'm really anxious. I think it's this, right? Because I Googled and looked up descriptions of postpartum anxiety, and it sounded like me. And I was like, how can I be seen quickly? Like, I'm not a danger to myself, you know? And she was ready to like drop everything and come to me. She's like, where are you? Because I was getting emotional in the car. I was like, I'm in my car driving.
Drop a pin on a Google map real quick.
Right.
Pull over. I'll be right there.
So what I really lucked out because that therapist was only about 15 minutes away from my house and she happened to have had a cancellation. So she was able to get me in really quickly. I probably made the call on like a Sunday. And then I think I talked to my cousin on Monday because I hadn't heard back from the therapist just yet. And then I think I heard from her either later that night or the next day. And she had a cancellation that I was able.
That is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I really lucked out. I really lucked out.
So you go in, right? It's like almost like dating, right? You're like getting to know this therapist.
Yeah.
So like what else was part of your journey from like the identifying that it was a problem to getting in to see someone was nice and short? Did you play the lottery that week? Like
I must have, but I think when I look back at it now, I was definitely struggling with anxiety and depression, like pretty much as soon as I got pregnant with number 2. So as soon as I got pregnant, they verified the test and then I called because it was considered a high risk pregnancy because I had gestational diabetes with my first. So with my second, also considered high risk. And they also were like, we need you to see the dietitian immediately. We need you to just, start pricking your fingers, checking your blood sugar. And that just really heightened my anxiety, right? Because my oldest was breech. So I had to have a cesarean. They were, if anybody's had gestational diabetes 6 weeks after, you do the test again, the 3-hour fasting, which is miserable when you're newly postpartum, you have a baby, you're nursing, and you have to drink this stuff that makes you want to throw up. So I was really nervous that I would need to be on metformin or, inject myself with insulin because diabetes runs in my family because it's hereditary. I think that just began the hamster wheel. And I guess I felt guilty because, oh my gosh, what's happening with my babies, right? My youngest had some hip dysplasia because she was breech for 28 weeks on because they didn't diagnose that gestational diabetes until later on into the pregnancy. So that was the other freak out, right? So you're worried about, they don't want you to gain too much weight, but they also worry when you lose weight. So as soon as I started on that diet, I lost weight because your carbohydrate intake is...
Right. You're like, you took away carbs. What did you think was going to happen?
Not completely take them away, but you definitely drop it down quite a bit. And yeah, they were like, no, my pregnant patients aren't supposed to lose weight. I'm like, no, but remember I did with my first. Same thing.
Oh.
It balances itself out. But instead of realizing, which I now know, that glucose meters can be off, it can be as much as a 5% difference in your numbers, the numbers that you're reading, that I was placing my value and my worth on whether I was in compliance or not. And for women that are pregnant with diabetes, they really want you to have a really strict control, stricter than you would for someone who's a type 1 diabetic or a type 2 diabetic. They really keep it super strict. And that I struggled with fasting, and it just my mood could be good or bad based on my fasting number was really high. And I'm
yeah, that's hard.
But my understanding of how blood glucose levels work, what you're eating, how much water you're drinking every day, how much exercise you're getting, all of these things become heightened on your radar.
Right.
Ugh, that's a lot.
I have a question. I need to go back in time though. Before you got pregnant, did you experience anxiety or depression?
Yes. So I did experience anxiety in my early 20s and a little bit with my first one, right? Because I was a new mom and it didn't feel like anxiety I'd known before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems so heightened, right?
Yeah.
That I just...
And that's what made you say,
yeah,
I think I need some extra help. And that's the sad thing. It wasn't something that was wrong with you. It was something that was going on for you, right?
Right. But I felt other people have gone from 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 children. What is my problem, right? I really beat myself up that I just couldn't handle it.
I mean, it's more than twice as hard.
Right? That's true. And I was the one who dropped my girls off to daycare, and then I drove. I had a 45-minute commute.
Okay, so there was extra stress.
Getting us out the door, and yeah.
Okay, so you got in very quickly with a therapist, and how did that go?
I felt like I was in a space where I could breathe, that it was someone who was just like dealing with a lot, like really validating my experience, my emotions. And she also said, I think you should work from home 3 days a week.
Ooh.
Based on the level of distress I'm seeing. And I laughed because it was like, my work will not approve that.
Oh, yeah, this was pre-pandemic. This was radical thinking, right?
It's very radical. Very radical.
It's like, do you even have internet at your house? Okay, it wasn't that long ago, but like,
No, but
it feels like that,
Hey, now.
right? Like,
so the compromise with work was to work from home 1 day a week for 3 months. And then I had to be back in the office full time.
How'd that go?
That was really rough. It took me a long time to process that and talk about it and blog about it, which I eventually did.
Oh, you blogged about it. So that was another form of therapy.
Yes, that was another form of therapy.
Is Instagram like the new blogging?
I think so. I think it became like a micro blogging because you could write kind of a story, but I was still too new in my healing journey to really start talking about it with family and friends. And so that was kind of where I found that community. And that if in the middle of the night I was feeling really low, there were moms in Australia that would chat back to you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I still keep in touch with those women too.
That's Yuz, right?
Yes. And Margaret. It was so lovely because you just felt like somebody kind of swooped in and like, and then another blogger that I followed who also had postpartum depression, but years and years ago, she went by the Empress, Alexandra Rosas. She would write things and I'm like, I think this blogger is local to me. I think she's local. Yes, she was like 15 minutes away. My sister-in-law met her. She spoke at their mom's group. So I DM'd her. I slid into her DMs and said, I'd love to meet you.
We're not friends yet, but
we're not friends yet.
yet.
And we met for coffee and my sister-in-law was with us and just amazing. So I think it was a couple months after that, she slid into my DMs and said, hey, have you heard about Listen to Your Mother? I'm thinking about bringing the show to Milwaukee. Would you like to do it with me? And I didn't ask anybody else. I just typed back, hell yes. Or yes, like one of the two. I mean, it was all caps.
You might have said yes, but the sentiment was like, oh, hell yes.
So then I shared my story kind of around that Mother's Day timeframe the following year in May of 2012. As soon as I told that story, and I'm a theater kid, so speaking in front of people is not a big deal, except for the fact that when you're telling your real story.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's not a script that you're memorizing. I mean, well, it is, but it's very personal though.
Right. Well, and yeah, we didn't have to memorize it. You could read it. So like everything was right there for you. So that was, a way for just to share your story. So right before we're supposed to start, I was just not speaking, like really freaking out. So Alexandra had to give me kind of a pep talk, like, you got this, just breathe. And I remember sitting down afterwards and like feeling like I'd been out of my body. Like I knew I was telling my story, but I can now watch the video and not cry. But it took me a couple times.
Wow. Is that on YouTube?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
It's on YouTube.
We're going to link that for sure.
So then we did that show in Milwaukee for 5 years. And every year we had a story about someone struggling with perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And it basically was one friend came to see me. She told her story the following year. And then another person came, told, and it was really awesome.
That is so cool.
So you really started to you found community online and then in person.
In person.
Forced fun on coffee dates. know, we're going to be friends.
We are.
You're going to love me.
Yeah. I think that's a natural evolution. Like when you're talking about something that is this vulnerable, like being able to say it online for all of the problems that being so online has brought, the gift that has come along with it is the ability to be vulnerable in sort of a safer way.
Yes.
Until you're
absolutely.
ready to be vulnerable face to face with someone.
Right. I didn't realize how much it had touched others until my mom would tell me stories. Like, you know, friends from high school were saying, yeah, Jenny, you know, she talks all about postpartum depression. And that was how my classmates started to think of me, right? Like, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm not that person.
You're that point person that, you know, hey,
which
get
was
in
really
touch with Jenny and she can give you maybe some resources or kind of point you in the right direction. So.
Yeah. You know, now I'm the person who will give you the PSI information. I put it in the card at the baby shower, even though I kind of get the dirty look sometimes, but I'm just like, here's my number. Call me anytime.
Like you might not be the person who needs it, but like if you're a new mom or a new parent, you're going to end up at a play group or at a story time or somewhere.
Somebody will need
and
it.
Someone might need it.
Yeah, that is a completely appropriate thing to put in a baby shower gift card. You know, like if you don't feel like yourself, text me or call me or check out postpartum.net.
Right. And I gave like, you can call or text. I've even said when my shift is.
Right? Yeah. I will answer you in English or in Spanish. Up to you. Your choice.
Yeah, it is. No, but yeah, I just never realized how many like ripples, you know, how much it just rippled out and touched people. And, you know, when I met Lauren for the first time, I was like a sobbing mess. I was like, you saved my life. And she's like, you saved yourself. You know that, right? Yep. And I was like, I know, but you were a big part of it. Yeah. I mean, it's just that sisterhood, that community. And it's really hit home with my daughters who are 12 and 15. All of a sudden, my oldest was like, wait, because you had this, am I more predisposed? And I said, yes. I will move in with you. And I was like, okay, well, just kidding, but maybe I'm not.
Hey, call me. I'll be there.
Right. Exactly. I was like, just call me. And I said, there's so many resources and the research, they're finding out so much different information. You know, and now we have a postpartum planning class.
Yeah.
I mean, I go on the website before every shift and I'm like, this is new. I haven't seen it. There is so much
like, it's only been a week.
Right. We've got like 60 people on staff. We're busy. Everybody's got real big ideas.
You've got real big ideas. There's all of a sudden a new project, a new support group. And it's so, it feeds my soul because you can hear someone kind of relax when they talk to you, or because we have gotten really specific about certain support groups and needs of specific groups, South Asian moms, Black moms, support groups entirely in Spanish, all of our loss groups. It is so wonderful to be able to say, we're chatting back and forth. I'm taking a look at everything they told me. And I said, you know what, hold on 1 second. Let me look at our list of support groups. And I think I've got a perfect one for you. And then for somebody to be like, oh, you do, this is so awesome, right? I'm like, please join. It's a safe space. It's peer-to-peer support. That way, you know, you're not alone. I'm telling you, you're not alone, but you see even more people in those support groups, right? And then you're like, oh my gosh, it's not just me.
You have both like the words, but also like the visual proof that there are other people currently also experiencing a very similar thing.
Yeah. And then I did the climb as well, too. Led the climb.
Yeah, you did.
Dang.
Yeah. And then I did a baby climb, too, with, I think, just the 4 of us because we were on vacation. Although, as my 2 said, we're not climbing mountains. We're just like walking.
Yeah.
So annoying.
We've already done the mountain climbing. The hard part, hopefully, is at least begun, right?
Yes.
If not over.
Yeah. So there's some of the full circle moments. So there was a blogger that I reached out to, Robin, who's one of our coordinators in Canada. And there was a mom struggling and she was in Robbins area. And I was able to say, I know this coordinator. We have a personal relationship. She's a dear friend and she can walk you through this and she'll be able to help you. And it just like the two of us were both like, that was so lovely. I saw your message, basically like weeping back and forth to each other.
Yeah.
It was now after she helped me, I was referring someone to her to be helped in the same way. So it's magic.
Jen, at what point did you find out about PSI? Like, at what part of your recovery process, or was it after?
It was after. After. All of a sudden, I remember thinking, like, well, there's this whole group. Like, where's
Wait a
there's
second.
coordinators in our area. I mean, just you guys, just mind blown. I blogged for postpartum progress for a while, and then took a break from that, and took a break from deciding kind of what I wanted to do with maternal mental health. Just, I think the age of the girls, and I think I had some work stuff going on. So when I took a break from that, was like, I really still like this. And Kat put out a message, and I was like, oh, okay. I just sent her back a message and was like, sure, I think I'd like to be a volunteer on the helpline. And
She was just looking for volunteers for PSI.
yep, she was looking for volunteers.
And at that point, you knew lots of people.
Yes. And I was like, you know what? I can do this. And then I was like, well, I do speak Spanish, but I don't, I wasn't really sure. And then I got connected with Carla a little bit later. So I was on the English line for a little bit before I started doing both. And it seems like that content will pop up or someone will reach out to me, right? Hey, I have a sister who is struggling and can you give them resources? And then in the Milwaukee area, we'll also now expanded to Madison is Mom's Mental Health Initiative. So I know a lot of those moms. And yeah, I mean, our PSI Wisconsin chapter is really strong. We're starting to get lots of real traction in certain areas of the state, which is great because it used to pretty much be a desert because we didn't have what we now have. Right now, we're starting to see a lot more resources. They've worked with the Medical College of Wisconsin as what they call the Periscope Project. So you can, again, get connected with a perinatal psychiatrist, similar to the PSI consult line, understanding dosage and medication. And Wisconsin's, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Is there anything, Jen, that we haven't, anything that you thought you might want to touch on, but we haven't quite navigated towards before?
One thing we didn't talk about, or that I didn't really, I think, discover until much later, is how much I struggled with intrusive thoughts and how much that long commute really contributed to it. I would not recommend that you have a really long commute to sit and be with your thoughts when you're real anxious and depressed.
If you're undiagnosed.
Sleep deprived. Yeah.
So that made it worse because you were just kind of sitting there and your brain was kind of allowed to spiral. Yeah. Oh, man.
And podcasts were in their infancy. If anything, all you had was like audiobooks, right? Like you had to borrow the CDs from the library for an audiobook. They were totally scratched because 400 people have already listened to them and definitely a toddler sat on it.
And I probably didn't even do that until maybe I got further into my recovery where I listened to like Tina Fey's Bossy Pants.
Oh, yes.
On the recommendation of, I think, my cousin, the social worker, like listen to comedy. And I was like, great. And then I was like, oh, but I'm also postpartum and I have to pee. So like also heads up, make sure you're not laughing so hard that you start crying from laughter and can't see when you're driving. That's kind of bad.
Yeah, everybody write that down. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. But yeah, I mean, it was just listening to music, and music had always been a big part of my life. But what I realized when I was struggling is that I didn't sing. I stopped listening to music. It literally felt like everything was cloudy and like everything was gray. And when I started to feel better, it was like, oh, I'm humming again. I'm singing. Really, really basic stuff, but you don't realize how negative your thoughts get, right? Because you're just beating yourself up so much.
And they sneak in. Like, it's not like you wake up one day and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yesterday, sunshine and rainbows. Today, gray skies. And it's sort of like nothing's right. It's slow enough, even when it's fast, even when it's like 48, 72 hours, there's this subtle change that like occurs that lets you believe that this is just who you are.
Right. That your symptoms are not symptoms. They are your personality.
Yep.
Spoiler alert, not true.
Right.
Yeah.
Your feelings are not facts, right? My therapist would tell me that all the time. Those intrusive thoughts, they're just thoughts, right?
Yeah.
That's what Brene Brown says, right?
Yeah.
What's the story you're telling yourself?
Right. Well, and those thoughts, what I started describing them to people, and I still use it as the analogy, is like the cartoon bubble right above your head, so that they're just like thoughts, and it's just the thought bubble, and it'll go away, it'll blow away. And like the more you fixate on them, the worse they get. And, when I finally did tell colleagues, because of course I had to disclose why I got to work from home, because it was an exception. They were like, yeah, we thought something was wrong.
Damn it. Why didn't you say something?
Right. Yeah. You can tell that I'm very chatty, and I stopped talking. I did not talk to coworkers. Like I was mute girl. I maybe said hi to people, maybe.
And those conversations, like if someone, let's say someone came up to you and they were like, you seem different. What's going on? Like you are not very likely, I don't think, to be like, well, and here's like the full honest truth. Like I'm struggling and these are the things I'm dealing with. Like, oh, I didn't sleep well last night. Or, oh, I'm just, stressed out about like the baby's teething or something. Like you'll come up with like a small thing and sort of gloss over. But I think if instead of posing those things as questions, they are also occasionally said as like a statement, hey, I'm noticing that like you're a little different and I care about you. I just want you to know that I care about you.
Yeah. So eventually what I did do was I did a presentation, and we kind of talked about how do you notice, what do you say, what are some of the things. And, the company that I worked for had nurses who managed our like maternity leave. So you check in with them. And so we talked about, which was fantastic. What are the things you should be looking for? What are the differences? Bring them back to our nurses on site, and I gave the nurses, right, like the PSI information, all of those resources to say, here's who we refer people to, here are all the resources we have. And here's, just to say, like, you okay? You just don't seem like yourself. I'm here.
All right. I'm ready for the lightning round.
The fourth trimester.
Did you like that? Are you team fourth trimester?
I think so. Yeah.
So as long as you're consenting to this fourth trimester round,
then we'll get started.
We will proceed.
I'm consenting.
Well, Jen, besides this podcast, do you have a favorite podcast that you'd like to recommend?
Oh my gosh, you guys, you don't want to see my list.
Oh, well, I've got a pen and paper.
Or do we?
So for mental health, besides yours.
She's categorizing it already. First
I
up,
like it.
Mental health.
It's like categories.
It is. So Mom and Mind with Dr. Kat. The other one that I like is The Anxious Achiever. It's with Maura Aarons Maley, and she just wrote a book that I'm actually reading. Also the same
Jen,
title.
We're going to get to that.
I know. Okay. I am also a political junkie, like when Emily said she loves Hysteria. Also same. Yeah, so I love Another Mother Runner. My parenting fun ones, What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood.
Yes.
Jen, are you a fan of a book in your hand or a book in your ear?
In my hand.
Interesting.
Oh.
Emily, are you surprised?
Only because she listens to like 300 podcasts. I'm surprised.
That's why I don't listen to books, because I've got too many podcasts to listen to.
Reading anything extraordinary?
Yes. So right now I am reading The Anxious Achiever, and it is basically how to turn your anxiety into a superpower for work, which I really love it. And then my fun read right now, I'm reading Prince Harry's memoir, Spare.
Yes.
Spare.
Which also is really interesting from a mental health perspective too.
Jen, what do you like to do for a quick mental break?
Sing.
Like in a choir?
No, not
in the
anymore.
shower?
in the shower, in my car. My husband and I asked the friend on the shelf, who's nowhere near me, so I can probably say her name, Alexa.
Oh, right.
Oh, Alexa's going to purchase all of the books that you just, going to repurchase the books that we just talked about.
What happening? Yeah. We were singing Broadway show tunes. And
fun.
Probably my other quick mental break, if I'm at work, and it was the same advice I gave to everybody at work too. So now we're going to have a whole team of walkers walking around the building. But right, if you need a break at work, just like I've literally just walked outside to go outside because I can't look at any more emails, or I can't respond to something, or I have no idea what this person just wrote. Like, I need a break.
Need a quick break. Yeah.
I need to walk away. I always share the grounding exercise with people, but I forget to use it myself.
Same.
I know, right? Like the amount of times I can probably guarantee you can pull up all of my tracked communication for text messages on the helpline. And if they are anxious, I'm telling them about the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique.
5-4-3-2-1.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
What is one way that you're going to show yourself a little radical love today, Jen?
I'm going through the Artist Way workshop book. It's like a way to kind of spark your creativity, and it's
like journaling.
Yeah, the book's by Julia Cameron. So that that'll be how I show myself some radical love.
Well, Emily has a burning question to ask you.
I do, and you have to put it out with water. Okay.
Wow.
I went there. What's up now? How do you take your water? Bubbles, no bubbles, ice, no ice, flavor, no flavor?
Generally, no ice unless it's really hot out. And also because the ice maker at work breaks all the time. Just get what you get. But yes, also coffee.
Are you good about drinking water? And do you have any tricks?
Yes, I do. My children make fun of me because I carry my water bottle with me. And now I have decorated it with so many stickers so I cannot lose it.
Yeah, nobody's stealing that and pretending like it's theirs.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have one that I have a sticker on here that says, "Hey, you've survived 100% of the worst days. Keep it up."
Oh, what a great reminder.
That's accurate. I like it.
So that is my trick, is that I carry it with me everywhere. And I'm pretty much constantly drinking. And in fact, if a work meeting, we had ones that were supposed to be an hour and a half. And I was like,
I'm not going to make it.
Right.
We're going to need to take a potty break in the middle here.
I'm going to need to request an intermission. If anybody in your area would like to get a hold of you, is there a great way to get a hold of you?
Yes. Instagram is, I'm at Jen Wren, so R-E-N, and Pody, which is my maiden name. So P as in Paul, O, D as in David, Y. And it's a public profile. That's a good way to get a hold of me. And then I'm on Facebook as well. And my blog, my Gmail account is tied to my blog too, so people can contact me there.
What's the name of your blog?
tranquilamama.wordpress.com. So maybe Jenny was a little bit anxious when she was studying in Spain. And so they would always say to me, "Tranquila, Jenny, tranquila, Jenny." So I was like, okay, you know what? This is what I want to be. I do want to be the tranquila mama.
Jen, thanks so much for coming on the pod today and telling your story. It is always a pleasure. So thank you for coming.
Thank you guys for doing this. It's so awesome.
Thanks for tuning in to the I Am One podcast. Check out today's show notes where we'll drop links to all the important things that we mentioned in this episode. Please consider sharing about I Am One on social media and following and rating our show wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. It only takes a minute of your time and, well, that'll help our collective mission of bringing resources and local support to folks worldwide. From everyone here at PSI, thanks again for listening.